We are live, hopefully, streaming to both places. Great.
Welcome to the first episode of Let's Build Media via Danielle's Workspace. Um,
Yeah, let's build workspaces. So
yeah.
I'm the official host of my own show now, joined with Bryan. How are you today, Bryan?
Oh, you're so special. I'm so happy to hear that you have your own channel now. And yeah, I'm doing fantastic, all things considered. As you can tell by the sign above me, my day is a full big uppercase A. So yeah, it's the squirrels can't keep you down for long. So for those of you who don't know, squirrels ate through our fiber line, and so I'm now working in a coffee shop until further notice.
Hey, we're happy that you made it.
Woohoo.
So for today's topic, I was thinking we can talk about the lead handoff between marketing and sales, which a lot of new age marketing advice will tell you that marketing and sales are the same team. Everybody's working towards the same thing. But inevitably, marketing is running things that sales needs to know about. Contacts are responding to things that sales needs to know about. And how that information gets shared between the two teams and hopefully across a single platform can really make or break how you grow together. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today and sort of my experience. I had a call this morning about it, which is why it's top of mind, how we're sort of creating those alert systems. We talked, Bryan and I, or not Bryan, Chris and I previously talked about sort of alerting and messaging across teams and what can get overwhelming. So this is a wonderful continuation of that conversation. I'm curious what
Absolutely.
kind of experience you have in this world.
Absolutely. And yeah, to your point on that, I think there's a huge amount to be said about the sales and marketing alignment and quote unquote the term RevOps that has been spoken so much in the ecosystem. Because in my mind, that's ultimately what RevOps boils down to. It's aligning your sales and your marketing team. And yes, there's some people who specify that it also aligns the customer success aspects. I would argue that customer success is pretty much just an augmentation of sales. You have outside sales, which is your true sales team, and inside sales, which is managed from your internal constituents and customer success managers, account directors, etc. And with that in mind, I know a lot of what we're going to be focusing on here is just making sure that we can keep all that clean, refined, and transparent just to enable you and your business, because that's going to be what sets you up to scale. So I'm excited for this conversation and everything we're talking about here, whether that's from a technical standpoint, a project management slash process management standpoint, or even from some of the ways that you can start leveraging AI and automation tools within HubSpot in order to further simplify this. And no, I'm not just using AI in a jargony way that I know happens all the time.
I know. I posted last week that I feel like a laggard among my friends, and you're definitely in that group where I feel like you're just a half step in front of me with all things AI. But I think this conversation is a great extension of the sort of alerting and awareness conversation that Chris and I had before, because when you flood your teams with information, it just becomes noise. And so making sure that the communication that you're delivering is relevant. So especially to your point where you might have customer success and sales under the head of RevOps alongside marketing, then you're not going to want to deliver the same message necessarily to sales that you would customer success. There's definitely a lot of commonality there, and you can build off of that. But ensuring that the right message gets to the right person is pretty key. And so the first thing I want to sort of talk through is how much context can you give? My conversation with my client this morning was really focused on, we've developed this absolutely beautiful lead scoring methodology for them that
Awesome.
breaks it out into 3 different scores, which is
Hmm.
super, super helpful in us being able to test and break down which factors matter. Is it activity? Is it fit? But when we started talking about mapping that over and how do we deliver these now hot leads that we've determined are hot leads, how do we communicate to sales that they're hot leads and they should follow up and they should
Hmm.
care? One is making sure that the communication is relevant and doesn't turn into noise. Two is making sure that they have enough context to take action. That next best step is what I'm always focusing workspaces and messaging around. And then the third is like, how much do you reveal? Because that beautiful scoring methodology takes a lot of understanding. And even though it
Mm-hmm.
boils down to three simple numbers, those three simple numbers represent a lot and everybody knows that. And so we don't want someone to get too lost in the weeds on like, well, why is it that? Or what is that? Or why does it matter? It could definitely help if you have some training and communication that gets people to the point or get sales teams to the point where they can use those numbers to prioritize. But to start off and to sort of migrate into this process, for them, it makes a lot of sense to just not show those numbers, just
Mm-hmm.
put them on the list as a hot lead.
Yeah, you're entirely right about that. And it's interesting that you mentioned the three different numbers because the metrics that you really describe are ones that I often encourage my clients when working with like project management and operational things to embrace. And it's a philosophy that you've probably heard in some capacity or another when you're working in project management. And it's referred to as like the ICE model or the PI model or the Addy matrix or the Moscow matrix, Eisenhower, whatever have you. And it essentially boils down into three, sometimes four categories of um, really determining which is the most actionable. And that's something that I really want to point attention to on what you just called out here of just you want to provide that much context and just a from an implementation standpoint, being able to add in a fourth dimension of calculation based off of those three aspects that that you described in there, I think would be really valid just for a how do I build this into my business kind of a standpoint. And you can do that very simply by just having a numerical value of just 1 through 5. And essentially, you can have that number be like an at like automated via a combination of does this have low, medium, or high context, like 1 through 5 scale, as it were. Uh, how much has this person been talking to us? Is it a lot? Like, do we have a very huge activity list, or do they only have like one or two emails? And can have that conversation about where that makes the most sense. Like, is it a lot of communication? They're going back and forth because it's a hard time to figure out if they're the right fit, or is it back and forth because you're actually, you know, potentially starting it, coming in it? Oh, they want to do this project for 2,000, but now through those conversations, you're actually looking at it for like 20,000. And then that timing aspect that you talked about of just when they need it. And then you can use that, operationalize that from that numerical scoring system, and then have that magical number that is, call it 5 being high, that shows you that you should act on this net new lead sooner, like with more urgency than you may another one. Because I know there's a whole aspect of like, the speed lead to call. I don't remember what the actual rhyme is, but this is a newer, better way of thinking about that process. And
Yeah,
like,
definitely. I
go
love that you
ahead.
bring up the sort of 1 through 5 scale because I think when we talk about lead scoring, and I already had three different scores, taking that to another level of abstraction might lose people. But this is a perfect segue into how the HubSpot leads object could play into this and how you
Yes.
can really use the workspace features that are in front of you to make this work. And so, two ways that I've seen the sort of marketing to sales handoff work is, well, I've only really seen it in real life one way, and that's
Yeah.
tasks.
Yep.
And so when you have a task created that's like an MQL follow up, it can be an easy way for everyone to sort of manage their tasks in one place. But I know that the HubSpot tasks have been a little forgotten, maybe not everybody's favorite. They easily get out of hand, especially if you have automation sort of kicking them off, or if you make a mistake, like I've done several times, where you update your scoring and then it sort of backtracks everybody and
Mm-hmm.
MQLs, the people that you haven't talked to in 3 years, and then pushes those all in. And then you have to do this next step of cleaning up all the tasks, and nobody trusts it, and it all falls apart. So
Mm-hmm.
tasks can be great. And I have heard, I haven't reviewed the list or watched the weekly releases yet. We have all this
Mm-hmm.
communication about the new features in HubSpot, and I still haven't listened to any of them because today is Tuesday. Yesterday was Veterans Day, so today's Fake
Yep.
Monday, and I'm still getting up to speed.
Yep.
But I know that there was some new features released about tasks and being able to
Mm-hmm.
manage tasks and reassign things through workflows, which is huge because in the past, when we've had like a salesperson leave a team that I'm working with, I either use a third party plugin to reassign those tasks or clear them out, or we delete them and forget that they ever
Mm-hmm.
happened, which is bad. Or I have a custom script that I can run and push it over to the new people. None of those are great because it's something that only I know how to use. The third party
Mm-hmm.
tools obviously make it a little bit simpler, but no one really knows to go looking for those because it feels like a feature that should be native. So now
Mm-hmm.
it is. It's getting there, thankfully, which I'm very excited about. And so that makes tasks a little bit more realistic for managing
Mm-hmm.
everything across the teams. And then you've got you can have the different task queues where it breaks down for customer success or sales so that then you've got some continuity in how you're pushing over that message. And then the other option, that's really the only one that I've seen used in real life. The leads object is obviously coming online or has been online and has gotten a lot of improvements lately. And so, where I have held some of my clients back from using it in the past because I felt like it was lacking the features that would give the context you need to really make that team take action. That has mostly been fixed now. And so I'm hoping to be able to move more clients over to leads and operationalize that because bringing this all the way back, when you've got sort of that next level of abstraction from the lead scores where, people are going to say, well, why did this get 50 points?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is this person 50 points? And they're just going to go off on a little tangent and side adventure to figure out why that is. We want them to trust the model, but also
Mm-hmm.
we want to make sure that we're communicating the right thing. They don't care that it's 50 points. They care that this person is landing in their, Salesforce lead queue, or is landing in their tasks, or is landing in their HubSpot leads to follow up with.
Yep.
HubSpot leads innately have their like warmness meter built in.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got that instead of another number in the mix, we can use that to help visualize it. And then there's a lot built on that too. So when you're in the sales workspace, it helps to prioritize things. Like HubSpot's already doing that for you. So if we're using the 3 scores that I've developed for this client and pulling those together. It's activity, contact fit, and company fit. And then I have a company fit synced onto the contact record with a sync property. Thanks for that, HubSpot. Now you can factor that all together in creating the lead or creating the latest activity on that lead. So yeah, I'm very excited for how leads can come into the picture on this.
Mm-hmm.
But I know so many people who are still using tasks. What have you seen out there in the world?
Yeah, and it's very similar, and uh, kind of the process that I've been building internally for myself. Actually, it's a little bit different, and honestly, I've been experimenting with a few different ways of doing this, and I know we're having a conversation later this week. For those of you who are listening, stay tuned. We have some stuff in the works there, but there's a lot we're really playing with. But before I get to that, I just want to quickly show um, all of you what the leads object looks like for those of you who haven't seen it before. And to just enable it, all you need to do is go into your settings on the left side, go into data management and open up the objects. And then you just enable the leads object. If you haven't used it before, it'll give you the option to, do you want to turn this on? And you just say yes, and then you magically have it. And essentially all it is a simplified version of the deal, like the deals object. And
It's like a
so you just
pre-deal pipeline.
exactly. And so what I would encourage you all to kind of keep in mind here is leveraging the properties that they have within the deal object in tandem with your lead scoring to pretty much set up a certain criterion to Once they hit this level of threshold, then they're in progress. Once they hit a next level of threshold, then they go and do qualified. And if they don't hit something that you need that's essential, they get disqualified. And
Can you click
then
into those
with
lead tags for a second? I
absolutely.
haven't played with those yet.
And so like the lead tags just there's a lot of different ways you can play with them. And you really just have it's the same kind of tagging mechanism that you would expect within any kind of tool. Um, but the nice thing about it, and I can spell test fabulously well, the nice thing about this is that you have the ability to build in the HubSpot filtering capability. Granted, you have some degree of limitations, which are, natural with either the current object or the associated object, but that opens up a huge threshold of bacteria, sorry, a huge threshold of opportunity that you can now actually use in order to further refine the various different leads. This can be a complete replacement for everything that you're using within, for example, using lists for your marketing qualified leads, and then another list for your activation qualified leads, or whatever term you want to throw in there. You can use this tagging feature and really just have that be the driving point behind everything that is your leads object.
I
And
love the layers of sort of categorization that we have with this because you can also have multiple lead pipelines. So when you get
mhm,
into things like potential partners or you have wildly different sales processes, if you have like a freemium offering at a lower price point versus an enterprise offering, you can have
mhm,
either pipelines for those or you can have tags, and it just gives you a lot of flexibility to create the workspace, bringing back to the theme for us,
yeah.
that works best for your team. But also to your point about setting those stages, that is where the sort of process management and project management is so crucial to make sure that you're aligned on those and communicating those effectively.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so, like, when you take that into an application, you look at this from, say you're an agency owner, and we're going to approach all this from perspective of being an agency owner who's looking to grow. You can use these processes for the lead side of things to determine, okay, is this a client who we should be talking about for a retainer based account? Should they be a project based account? Are they a hybrid, onboarding project plus retainer? And then based off of that information, you can really tailor your service offering and the tools and resources that you need to allocate to them. Not necessarily saying that you should be spending more or less time for one versus another, but you can at least start getting your customer support or your client success team ready to prepare all of this for when the lead gets closed. And so in my mind, like I haven't documented this yet, but like the process that I'm now looking at doing this for is whenever I have any net new lead, it essentially goes over, organizes, and qualifies it based off of that criteria that I've described. Like, is it a project based or a retainer based or a hybrid based project? Because that's how I do a lot of my work too. Based off of that, we are then able to qualify them once they've scheduled a conversation call, and it's no longer like just email back and forth. Once they scheduled a call, it gets out of lead pipeline and then goes in the deal stage pipeline. Naturally goes through the deal pipeline as one would expect it to be. And then as soon as it goes into sold, then then I have a separate pipeline that is also a deal pipeline for just managing clients. And so that's something that, I'm sure there's a better way of doing it within HubSpot that I just haven't spent enough time to clean all of that up yet. But it's just a very quick and easy example of just being able to enable this on your behalf. And I mention all of that without the caveat of just, being able to automate some of these processes. And automating some of these processes, uh, you can very easily do for once it becomes a closed one deal, for example, you can have a workflow that automatically moves it to a different pipeline that's say client retainer, and then you could have it push into say using ClickUp or Asana or Monday. It duplicates a project for you on behalf for that client, and that's where you can incorporate some of the like the AI related aspects, because a lot of these plugin tools are a hey, look, if this thing exists, then do that. Using AI, that's where you're able to leverage it in order to actually write the script. And that's what that script is going to be what allows you to copy over that whole project within Asana using an additional template, because you're creating that custom code, but you're not really creating it. You're just talking to the machine and providing it with the right context and the right information and as much information as you can so that it can in turn build it on your behalf.
Yeah, I love that. And you're giving me the perfect segue. So, two thoughts on that. One, that connection and that sort of process mapping and handoff between systems is almost as crucial. I've had a past episode about integrations and what you should really look for in your integration and how some of them are just really a lie. But making sure that you get that information from the first point of contact, you retain that history through their lead life cycles, and then you
Mm-hmm.
get them to the deal pipeline. You get it through a deal, you can automate the handoff to that, especially you and I, where we're often working solo,
Mm-hmm.
automating as much as we can and doing things to keep ourselves organized, and sort of streamlining how we get that done is amazing to unlock. It's so exciting that we have these tools at our disposal. And the other thing that you made me think of is how we can automate things within that handoff. So, like I mentioned, you might have different pipelines or different tags for, a freemium versus an enterprise offering.
Mm-hmm.
If it's freemium, you probably want to streamline that so that they almost never talk to someone, especially if it's sort of a low level subscription and you really want to focus your small scrappy sales team on, closing the big revenue generating deals that will churn slower and, do so much better for your business. But you want to make sure that those freemium clients still get a good experience. And so you can automate through the follow up when you have an enterprise HubSpot. I think you have to have an enterprise sales hub. You can do a distribution into sequence enrollment. So you can do either your round robin or your territory mapping for those contacts, and then the like enterprise feature that you would have to pry from my cold dead hands as soon as I get a client to get on Sales Hub Enterprise is that you can drop them into sequences. So now instead of creating this massive task queue for your sales team to follow up with low level freemium leads, now you can automate that handoff, and you could even get them into an onboarding flow that way. So you
I
could
think you
have
could
this sort
actually
of,
do that at the I think you could do that at the pro feature now, in all honesty.
I don't
Verifying
think you can do sequence enrollment.
I'm fact checking myself right now, but I think sequence
Please
enrollment's
do, because
available
I
in
would love
pro.
for that to be a pro feature. I'm pretty sure it's an enterprise feature, like the actual sequence enrollment. But I love that, and my clients that do have it, it's a game changer because then marketing gets to sort of prove themselves one step further. In some organizations, SDRs even come under marketing because that handoff is really just an initial touch point to see like, is this person real and do they have an interest, and then it moves on from there. And so now you get to automate that step at least through email, where you can push them into that next step that the salesperson would take, and then really only flag it for your sales team if there's something else that happens. Hopefully you've also got your product events pushing into HubSpot in some format, and that way you could also get some of those product event signals that they might be worth following up with, and sort of pull all that together so that, coming back to the topic of our show, you've got the right context for that
Mm-hmm.
handoff. You're kicking that handoff a bit further down the pipeline, but you're still ensuring that everything that's delivered is relevant, is timely, is exactly what they need to take the next best step.
Exactly. And I did just fact check myself, and you're correct. Sequences are still available only at the enterprise. However, what I did remember that you can do on it based off of this new aspect is that leveraging the features within the new lead object. You can use the custom properties within that new lead object that's now available to pretty much flag it within your clients, and then you can define enrollment criteria for your sequence to essentially be filtering on a specific list, and then that
Mm.
list being an active list can then be dynamically updated based off of the lead object um, custom property the custom property you've established. That essentially is, once you get to this branch, check this lead object as just mark it as a checkbox, and then you now have a workaround for doing workflow enrollment, not workflow, sorry, sequence enrollment and unenrollment directly through workflows at a pro level, just with this new lead object plus some automation and a couple lists. And
I'm gonna go try
that
that.
can be huge.
I think I just talked a client out of downgrading, and that was one of the reasons. I like I told you, you could buy it from my cold dead hands once I get it. But hey, if we could figure that out, that would be awesome. It's
Oh,
definitely, I mean, getting that migration over to the leads object is still kind of a slow
it's a
process. You still
process.
have
Yeah.
to take that step back and really understand how it's going to impact your business and what you need to set up, what you can automate, and sort of take inventory of how that object will get applied in your business. So it's not like you can flip a switch, but you can't really flip a switch if you're just going to start shooting MQLs into sequences anyway. You shouldn't. So
Hmm.
either way, whichever path you choose, you need to think through that strategically and make sure that it's, a well documented and well understood handoff, even if it's just later down the pipeline. So it's really exciting to see things like that come together, especially where sales teams are small. I often work with startups. So, they're trying to squeeze every minute of value that they can out of their teams and not burning them out and not driving them crazy with 1,000 tasks every day. So really dialing that in is pretty crucial. And I think the one last thing I want to touch on here is we talked a little bit about what kind of things you might want to surface in that information. And so to really get into the nitty gritty, when I am working with a client and they want to do that handoff from sales to marketing or sales to CS, the things that I always, always, always make sure are super visible are the last session date. So when was the last time they came to your website? What was their last conversion or last conversion date? So you know how recently they did something with your brand and what it was. Which, like, honestly, if you just had that, probably enough information to at least
Hmm.
start a conversation. Make sure their phone number and email is visible. So, but if you had that, you could pick up the phone and say like, "Hey, it seems like you were looking at this. Are you working on something related to this? Or we're also, having this webinar on that white paper you read." Like whatever it is, it opens the door for a very relevant and timely conversation. And then beyond that, you also probably want to know. Um, Actually, that would be it. Like that's the bare minimum for me.
Yeah.
Like, what else would you throw in there?
Honestly, there isn't much else to throw in there. So that's all.
I
That's all
think
you really need
last
to get running.
Yeah, making sure that you're not stepping on anyone's toes too. So hopefully your owners have been pretty well managed up to that point so that that person who's being prompted to follow up is the only one who would ever be prompted to follow up. But
Hmm.
if that has changed, if they were previously engaged with an SDR that maybe got moved into an AE role recently, you might want to know any previous owners or date of last sales email, and what was the last sales email, date of last sequence finishing, sort of any other context for communication that they may have received. You want to make sure that you're sort of pulling that story together before you reach out to them. Because if you reach out in a vacuum and assume that they've never talked to your brand before, you can look really stupid. Like you need to make sure
Hmm.
that you've got that ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. And the context is key. And that's the nice thing about these different objects and different pipelines that are becoming more available at pro and even starter levels, is that with the added availability of each one of these objects, you can then d- create new pipelines and have different triggers to create new, we'll call it opportunities, but like records, sorry, creating new records in each one of these pipelines. And those pipelines, whenever you create those new records, you can choose what information you want to have propagate over. based off of criteria you set. And so, to your point about that context control, this is a great opportunity for you to be able to define that, you have all this information back and forth during the lead, but as soon as you want it to go to sales, you can choose the criteria within a workflow that you actually care about to be populated into that new record once it's been created. And
Yeah.
that ensures that you're only populating the record with the relevant context. It's not just all activity from the last 30 days,
Right.
or all the contacts, or like if there's multiple companies associated. You don't need to worry about that. You can sift through the weeds and focus on this company, these two contacts, and these specific things that we're talking about. And
Yeah.
there you go. You're well on your way.
Yeah. And coming back to the layers that you mentioned, you've got lead pipelines, you have lead tags, you've got properties within the lead, you have properties within the contact. And then you can use those to customize the various views that your teams might encounter as they go through whatever your process is for following up. And then as you make that into a new record, whether it's a task record or a deal record that you're creating for the next step of that follow up, you can either automate that and make sure that you're pulling in the relevant context to that. But if your process includes engagement from sales a little bit further up funnel before, say, a deal record is created, then you've got so many different things at your disposal to help create
Mhm.
that context and keep everyone on the same page. So I think we'll stop it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll be back here next week every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 Central.
Yep, amazing. Thanks so much for having me, Danielle. And, looking forward to continuing this conversation, like you mentioned, next week. Catch you all then.
See you then. Okay. I have no idea if that went live anywhere.